Hello everyone, I would like to talk a few minutes about Reason Compact by Proppelerhead software. This is the iTunes Store page for this app, and there are a lot of mixed reviews on this app. So a few people say it's a very poor app, a few people say it's a great app. And I actually made my own review here before I actually bought the app and before there was a media upgrade. And after that I updated my review to reflect my new opinion about this app. And sadly, the developer's response from after I've upgraded it to the actually MIDI-enabled version was if I had tried the MIDI-enabled version. So that's a little bit weird, and it's a shame, because it's an interesting app to talk about, because there's a lot of good stuff, but sadly also a lot of bad stuff. So let's just dive into it. So here we go. This is Europa. And it's a fine app. It works. And as you might have noticed, there was sound playing without me actually touching the screen. And that is because I'm using a Akai MPK Mini keyboard right now to play on my iPad. So that's great. They actually implemented some MIDI functionality. However, it's very incomplete, because some of the things you might want to do in your synthesizer, because you can hardly call this a DAW, but we'll get into that, is you might want to actually use your controls on your MIDI controller to control parameters in your software synthesizer. Like for instance, you might want to change your filter with the knobs on the keyboard, because it's more convenient than having to scroll through the interface. So you might think I can just hold a button and twist the knob and it will learn anything, but it won't actually learn anything from that. And as you might notice on the screen, there isn't anything that indicates there's a MIDI learn function in this app. Not even in the menu is there an option to MIDI learn anything. And this is incredibly inconvenient, because there's a lot of scrolling in Reason Compact as it is. We'll get back to that. But it's weird that a major company like Proppelerhead hasn't implemented this sort of stuff, where DRC actually does have MIDI learn. And it works really simple. You can press a control you want to alter, wiggle your knob, press a different control, wiggle your knob, and so on. And you can actually change the parameters of your synthesizer with your controller. And this extends to pages in the background as well, so you can actually MIDI learn, for instance, your second oscillator octave. Let's take this knob. I don't think it's currently mapped to anything. And even if I push this to background, you can still control it. Whereas in Reason Compact right now, if you want to change the filter, you'll have to scroll to the filter page, which is... oh, there it is, there's the filter page. But now you might want to make changes to your waveform, and you have to scroll back to your waveform page, which is called Engine in Europa. So that's inconvenient in itself. You have to scroll a lot. And even with controls which are really important for each other, like for instance, you might want to change your LFO on your engine. So you can change the shape. You can change the amount. But you can't change the shape of the LFO right here. So you have to scroll all the way to the right until you get to the LFO page. And here you can make changes. For instance, let's just make it really weird. Make it a little bit slower. There we go. But now if you want to actually see what it does to your waveform, we have to once again go back to your engine page. And now we can see what actually changed here. So that's very inconvenient. It means that for sound design you have to do a lot of scrolling in this app to actually access all the parameters of the app. And this would be in part fixed if they would just make it MIDI learning, so you can just use the knobs on your MIDI controller to access some of the parameters of the app. Also a thing worth noting is the way that they are using screen real estate right now. As you might notice, there's a really big on-screen keyboard here, which is, well, it's fine, and you can set it to use a key, a scale. You can set it to any scale you want. You can set it to major or minor, and this way if you play anything on here, it will all be in the same key, which is fine, but in a lot of cases you will most likely not be using this app to control your synthesizers, because a lot of people, and I would agree with them, would rather use a keyboard for this. Like, for instance, the MPK Mini. It's a very popular keyboard for a reason. Well, not for this reason, but you get my point. Instead of doing this, and let's just switch back to DRC, which is an app I really like. For instance, you can just use the keyboard if you want to. So now I have a really big keyboard. I can set it to scale or chromatic. I've got my nice big mod wheel. Got my pitch wheel. And if I don't need it, I can just minimize it, and I have a lot more real estate for controls I might actually need for playing around with it. So that's one of the downsides of Reason right now. And sadly, and I really wish it would end here, but there is more to talk about right now. So, for instance, you might like me to build patches, right? Build your own sounds. So it comes with quite a few sounds out of the box, so it has a bunch of built-in sounds. This is fine. But you might also notice there's no option to actually save any of your own sounds right now. So, not here. Not here. This is where you buy sound packs made by Proppelerhead, or maybe by artists. You can go into the menu, for instance. Here's the menu, and you might notice there's an export button. Just reach underneath, there we go. And you can export your Europa sounds into a Europa sound patch, Reason 10 or a sound file. And my first instinct was, well, I want to save it as a Europa sound patch, which you can tap. But it will then ask you if you want to save it in your cloud or in your iPad. But as you have noticed, there is no import option. So right now you can only save your sounds to be used in Europa on a desktop PC or Mac, which is incredibly inconvenient. And there is a workaround for it, and I'll get to that in a second. But it's very inconvenient because it means you can't use the quick select menu on the bottom to switch your patches. Whereas DRC, you can just hit the save button, give it a name, categorize it even, like for instance bright or legato or synthesizer, and once you've saved it, there's a local list with all your saved patches, so you can easily recall them, and if you are in this list, you can actually just run through it while you're playing sounds. So that's a heck of a lot more convenient than not being able to do that. And so how you go around saving your sounds right now in Europa, is the only way I know you can save sounds in it, is by making a new project. Because that's all you can do. You can make a new project. And if you have a project, just let's take this this project, for instance. So let's mess up the sound a little bit. So with this thing going, let's make it really obnoxious, so it's quite obvious that the sound has been changed. Let's bring in the second oscillator. Okay, so this is a really different sound from what it was. And if I leave the project now, I go to a different project, and then I go back to the project I was just in, it has saved the sound. But there's also a little bit of a problem with this. Because let's say I am opening the app, right? And I'm playing around with a sound, and I'm changing it around and making a new sound out of dispatch. And I want to save that particular sound, but not lose the old sound. You can't do that. Because there's no way to save a project as a new project. So once you open the app and you are in a project, you are altering that specific sound. And I have actually lost quite a few good sounds due to this fact, because again, and I'm a bit of a fanboy here, but DRC has the option to take whatever sound you want, just mess around with the sliders, whatever you want, and then saving it as a new instance instead of saving it automatically over your old sound. So if I mess this up, which is pretty hard because it's a horrible sound, it's still a horrible sound, I can just choose it, revert it back to its patch state, and it's once again an even more horrible sound. This was probably a bad patch to demonstrate, but it's about the concept of being able to make your own sounds and store them in a way that you can actually access them again. But let's just move on, because we're still not quite there. So let's say you've got your project, you've got your sound, you're quite happy with it. That's all fine. But let's say you actually want to make some loops, because you like to make loops and you can run them in the background while you're playing around with other instruments. You can make exactly one loop in this app. You can set the loop length in the menu, and that's it. You can't make a second loop or variation loop. You can only make this one loop. And now you might think, I'll just make a second project and use the same sound and write another loop. But you can't do that, because you can't transfer your sounds between projects. So if you are going to be using multiple loops, you'll have to run this instance of Reaper, for instance, into a different DAW, like Cubasis or the GarageBand kind of thing, and write your loops in there, which kind of defeats the purpose, because this app is called Reason. And as far as I know, Reason is a DAW. So at that point, you're just running a DAW and a DAW, which is odd. And it's even odder that the actual piano bar in this app is vertical. Which is really weird, because if you've ever used a DAW, you'll know that piano bars are usually left to right. Which makes sense, because you can use far more of the screen. And I mean, it works, obviously. I mean, if it wouldn't work, it wouldn't be there. But it's still very inconvenient to have it like this. So, overall, there are a lot of quirks about this app at this very moment. So you might be thinking, is it even worth to pick up this app right now? And I'll have to be really honest, as is, if you are on a bit of a tight budget, or you are looking for really a synthesizer app to use a lot, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, even though it has great sound design possibilities. It can make some really cool sounds. It's just a nightmare to manage your sounds, and very inconvenient to use this app right now. if you are looking for an app to try sound design on this engine, I mean, it is fairly inexpensive. And I've had a lot of fun with it, even though it can be frustrating. So there's definitely potential there. And if you trust Proppelerhead Studios enough to actually improve upon this app, definitely do it. But right now, it would also kind of, I wouldn't recommend it. Even though it's cool and it's fun, get yourself something like, for instance, DRC or even Synth1, which is actually a free app, or Caustic, which is pretty much the same price, and it can do more than Reason Compact can do right now. So without a doubt, it will be updated, of course, because there's still so much to fix, and they already integrated MIDI to some extent, so I'm sure they'll add more to it later on. But right now, I would say just keep the store page in check, read if they change stuff, and if they do, well, I would definitely like to make a new video and inform you about it. So for now, this is already a pretty long video about me ranting about the issues of Europa. So let's not make it any longer. Let's leave it right here. And once there is an update, I will definitely post a new video. Keep you guys informed, and let's see where it goes. I'd like to wish you a great day. Bye bye.